Well, we're living in a virtual digital world, so our next speaker is joining us virtually and digitally through Skype. Tim Ferris, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek, and is just launching his book this week, The 4-Hour Chef, and is also a prominent angel investor in Silicon Valley. And I don't know if you've been following the saga in the New York Times and the other papers that are reporting on it, but when Tim decided to pass on traditional distribution of his new book and went with Amazon to be his primary agent and distributor of his book, there was a backlash in the book publishing world. And so many book publishers are not stocking his book or not promoting his book, and so Tim is out on book tour promoting his book this week, which is launching this week. But he's kept his appointment with us to join us via Skype, and so without further ado, we will welcome Tim Ferris.
Okay, so I should continue. All right, I wasn't sure, just because I'm hello, three friends I see. Well, thank you very much for coming to this, everybody. And I'm very sorry I couldn't make it in person. I would love to have been there. And I'm going to do this in English, but a long time ago, hace mucho tiempo ya, vivía en Argentina, y así que se me pegó el acento porteño. Digamos porteño trucho. That's what I am. So I won't subject you to my terrible yucatense, but I'll do this in English. And I thought a good place to start might be to talk about the term entrepreneur. What does entrepreneur really mean, and what should it mean to you, perhaps? And this really became a question for me when I was taking a class called High-Tech Entrepreneurship, which was ELE 491 in Princeton, New Jersey, at Princeton University. And I was finishing my final project. It was final paper. It was due. It was worth something like 1/3 of my entire grade. For a professor named Ed Shao. And the company I was interviewing at the last minute filed for an IPO. They went into a quiet. They couldn't give me any information I needed. And so they told me that they couldn't participate in the paper. Now keep in mind, this is about 48 hours before it's due. And I wanted to tell Ed the bad news. And Ed has been a congressman for 2 terms. He ran IBM Data Storage on the board of Reader's Digest, competitive figure skater, invests in tons of companies. And he said to me, well, Tim, entrepreneurs are people who make things happen, right? And I had to scramble and find another company to interview, did all of it in 48 hours, pulled an all-nighter, and in the paper a few minutes before it was due, and very luckily got an A. It's one of my best papers I've ever written. But the point being that an entrepreneur, I think, is a mindset. It's not someone who owns a company necessarily. It's someone who undertakes, emprender, all right? Whether it's flat or otherwise, someone who undertakes and creates something from nothing. And when I teach at ELE 491, there are a few things that I ask at the beginning of the class. And this is about how to produce profitable companies without taking outside debt, but in some cases now, how to play the venture capital game. And I ask a few questions. The first question is, how many of you want to be a salesman? And I mean salesmen, saleswomen. And of course, almost no one raises their hands. And then I say, well, we'll come back to that. And we'll come back to that in this presentation, because whether you want to be a salesperson or not, you all have to be very good deal makers. At least that is what I see in the highest level of entrepreneurs, certainly tech entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And having spent time in Chile, in Mexico, in other places, I think that you can replicate a lot of the best practices in Silicon Valley without very much difficulty at all. I think you can do that. I know you can do that. I've seen it. All right, the next question that I ask is, how would your decision and priorities change if you could never retire? What would you do if you were retired? So if you couldn't have a deferred life plan on redeeming in the last 10 years, let's say, all of that hard work, how would your decisions and priorities change? And I think this is very worthwhile considering, even if you are a venture-backed startup or taking investors, because certainly positive outcomes are not guaranteed. And that's certainly true for me right now with the bestseller lists, and I can tell you stories about that if I want. The very first experience I had with tackling that I gave you well before I started storytelling networking in Silicon Valley, well before starting my own company, certainly well before advising, investing in many different companies, whether it's Evernote, Uber, Nextdoor, a lot of different companies that you'd recognize. Before all of that, my very first experience was as a student, and I was worked $8 an hour in the attic of library, and I was not very happy. This was $8 an hour, so even full-time, that would be about $16,000 a year US. So I was only working part-time. I couldn't afford anything. So I put together a class for speed reading, which is something that I taught myself to do. And I offered it for $50 for each student, which I thought was outrageous, but I wanted to try the pricing. And I remember my first class, I put the posters up everywhere. I rehearsed my presentation. It was an hour class, and it was guaranteed, 100% money back guarantee. So you get even more than what you paid back if it didn't work. And sold out. I sold out. I had a class of about 3 students. I was extremely nervous. I couldn't afford to rent any location, so I actually used the daycare kindergarten area of a church. Let me use it on Saturday. And that was the first. And I walked out of there with pockets. I was on my bike, and I had pockets full of checks and $20 bills for, I think, roughly $1,500, right? And that blew my mind. I never felt richer in my entire life. And so I started to build this company, it wasn't like to build this speed reading operation. It was just one person. And I realized it didn't scale, right? So these are all the issues that other real companies deal with. So it didn't scale. I was like, well, what can I do? Maybe I'll create an audio cassette. I'll create a product, and that will allow me to scale. Instead of scaling headcount, hiring other people, licensing, I can just create a product. And so I created this audio cassette. And it was for accelerated learning and other things. And I created 500 of them. It's all the money I had in the world. I created 500 audio cassettes. And I only threw them out about 4 years ago. I still have, I only sold 1 copy, and that was to my mom. So did everyone hear my mom's story? No? Oh my God. All right. Where did I cut out? Can anyone tell me where I cut out? Or no? Okay. That's all. The point being, I tried to create the speed reading business. It didn't scale because I didn't want to teach more classes myself. I didn't want to hire people. This was in college. And I decided to scale out, create a product, and then figure out how to sell it. So I created these audio cassettes, maybe 500 audio cassettes, all my money in the world, and no one bought a single copy except for my mother. And that was, of course, a big failure. But it taught me a lot of the lessons that I've carried into working with startups, creating my own businesses, in which cases they have worked. So I thought I would talk about just a few primary points that I think apply to all entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs defined as people who want to make things happen or create things from nothing. And of course, some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are from Mexico, or from Central and South America. So Silicon Valley has no monopoly on creative thinking. Of course, look at Carlos Slim and look at all these other people. There's some incredible examples of innovation and entrepreneurship. But I think a few things are universal. The first is understanding who your customer is. So understand your market and choose your market before you develop your product. This is the statement I made with audio cassettes. These audio cassettes and then try to decide how to market them. This is what a lot of engineers do. They'll create something, they'll say, I have this awesome thing, anybody want to buy it? And it doesn't work. Typically it does not work. All right, so the article that you should all read is 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly was the founding editor of Wired magazine. It's free online, 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly. That's number 2, and I'm sure these have both been translated into Spanish if we prefer that, is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Rees, R-I-E-S, and Trout, T-R-O-U-T. Those are the only 2 books that I think you need to read to understand marketing. In terms of market validation and ensuring that your market is big enough to sustain you, income, revenue-wise, certainly as a lifestyle business, but even as a venture-backed business, look at what Noah Kagan, K-A-G-A-N, has written on my blog, which is just 4hourblog.com. Okay, that's point 1, is that you need to define and choose your market before you develop your product. That increases the likelihood of success. There are exceptions, but more number two is 80-20 analysis. I want to talk about the important 80-20 analysis, and this is for you personally, it's for you business. The 80-20 analysis, or the 80-20 law, also referred to as Pareto's law, we'll call it the DIP law, dictates that 20% of activities, products, and services will produce 80% of the results of the plan. And I would highly encourage you to schedule 80-20 analysis of your business and of your personal life every 2 weeks, at a minimum every 2 weeks. What this looks like is as every, say, Monday or Friday, you can pick whichever day you would ask yourself, what are the 20% of product services, I'm framing this for business, that are producing 80% of, say, my post-tax profit, or my net income, whatever number is important to you. So the 20% of customers and products that are producing the vast profit or revenue. Second, what are the 20% of products or customers that are consuming 80% of my time or resources, or producing 80% more of my expenses? It's amazing is that you find these two groups. You have your easiest to manage, most profitable customers, and your highest maintenance customers almost never intersect. Very, very seldom. Right? When I did this for my own business, I had distribution in 12 countries. This was 2004, and more than 100 wholesale customers. I think around 120 wholesale customers, and 8 of them, were producing more than 95% of my profit. And they were the lowest maintenance customers. So then I put systems in place. Those other customers that I wasn't. The goal is not sometimes work for every moment of the day from 9 to 5. The goal is a specific outcome. In this case, it's revenue or average revenue per user or whatever. The way you apply on a personal level is looking at the 20% of people and activities that produce 80% or more of your positive emotion. We don't have questions.
Hey, Tim, can you hear me? Can you hear somebody? Hello, Tim? Okay. My question is, I'm a founder of, I'm a founder of a startup that is just starting. I have, okay, is this happening? What's happening? I will do the question. Okay, my question is, being a founder that has no, that needs to improve your skills in negotiating, talking to, taking care of the financial part, talking to investors and all these kind of things. If you have skills maybe in the technological part or maybe around the problem you're trying to solve, how can you improve in an early stage these skills so you can just take care of all the funding and the financials and the business part of your startup?
Yeah, okay. So there are a few recommendations that I have. The first is look at SlideShare for presentations and decks that have worked in the past. Also, look at any type of YC demo day coverage. I think if you're talking about pitching investors specifically, there's a lot of feedback in, there's a new book on Y Combinator written by Randall Strauss, I think it's Strauss, not Strawson, which covers the presentation process. A few books that I would recommend, they're very good for this. The Getting Past No book, specifically, Getting Past No. I'll type it out so that the moderators can share it later. Getting Past No is one book that would dramatically help with this. The other is Crucial Conversations. And then last but not least, you have to do mock interviews. Do not walk into an interview with a venture capitalist without having rehearsed and prepared with people pretending to be venture capitalists, because that's like going to the World Cup without ever having practiced beforehand. You don't want to do that. So make sure you practice on stressful circumstances before you walk in the door. Okay, that's the question.
Yeah, my name is Darren Morris, and I understood we built our business, our first business, on the 80-20 rule professionally, but you started to talk about the 80-20 rule personally. I've never heard that, and that sounds interesting. Can you finish that thought?
Yeah, all right. So the 80-20 rule is important to apply personally because ultimately I think that building companies, certainly allocating resources to improve quality of life. That can be just for your customers, but you would hope it would also be for you and your family. And the thought is very simple. So you're asking yourself, what are the 20% of activities and people who are producing 80% or more of my positive emotional states? Those go on your to-do list. And what I mean by to-do list is you schedule more time and block it out in your calendar dedicated to those tasks. Then you ask yourself, what are the 20% of activities and people who are producing 80% or more of my negative emotional states? And you create a not to-do list. And in your calendar, put in a time that you will establish policies that decrease time with those people. It's not enough just to say, I want to minimize time with those people, for instance. You have to establish policies for dealing with it. And is that going to make everyone happy? Of course not. But here's the thing. There is no one path to success, but the surest path to failure is trying to please everyone else. You cannot do it. And so you have to choose carefully. And I think that using an 80-20 analysis, personal emotional states, is a very good way to do it. Okay, I'll take one or two more questions.
Hi, Tim. Have you ever had a board of directors, and what's your tip for dealing with them?
I have never had board of directors, thankfully, but I have sat in on many board meetings. So I've been in many board meetings before. I think, can you be more specific? I mean, management of board of directors is like managing superiors or equals in, I think, any particular situation. What I would say is you have to ensure that whatever the board composition, you retain as much voting control as possible. So read a book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld and one of his colleagues at Foundry Group. So Venture Deals is the book to read, at least from a terms and conditions standpoint, so that it doesn't matter how good you are at negotiating or placating people, if you lose all of your voting ability, you will be in a position of weakness, and that it's difficult to get things done at that point. But all of the books that I read earlier on negotiation are key, and Venture Hacks is also a very helpful resource for this. Hacks written by Naval Ravikant and Nivi, who also run AngelList. I think it's a good resource. All right, let's take one more.
One more?
Hey, Tim. You made the transition from basically a product and marketing-based business into sort of the tech world very quickly and easily, and you're sort of known for being part of the tech world and tech investing. How did you make that transition so smoothly and quickly when a lot of people enter the valley and they struggle for years to get traction?
Okay. I don't know, I apologize, I don't know the name of the person speaking into the microphone on Skype, but I can hear the person asking the question. So if you could ask one more time, please. It's because I was having trouble hearing with both voices going at once.
Sure.
If you just asked the question, I apologize. Could you just repeat that once, please?
Sure, Tim. I'm Sean Gallagher, and I was curious, a lot of people come to the Valley and they try to make it transition from like a marketing, a product-based world to Silicon Valley, the tech world. A lot of people struggle with that. You seem to have a very easy and quick transition into the tech world, and now you're known for being a tech investor. So how did you make that transition so smoothly?
Okay, so I would say there are a few things. The first is the transition always looks smoother than it is. It's a bit like a duck. They look really smooth when they're gliding across the surface and they're kicking like hell underneath. But a good product and good marketing is universal. I actually think that the principles of developing a good go-to-market strategy, identifying your target market, i.e. your top 1,000 fans and early evangelists, and then developing a product for them, ideally one that also scratches your niche, applies to consumer marketing offline as well as it does online, as well as it does in the venture-backed world. So if you look at, let's say, how Square is executed, I think it is very similar to how let's say a Visa or MasterCard would have executed in the very early days. The media through which, the channels through which they market, and perhaps the tools that they use to develop products, i.e. agile software development versus waterfall versus whatever it might be, are different. But if you develop those skill sets, I think it can be a pretty easy transition. The Venture Deals, Venture Hacks, all of the negotiation books are important. Every one of the resources that I mentioned can be used to build a non-tech or non-Silicon Valley-based company, as well as a venture-backed company. And I would just underscore one more thing, which is that building a good bootstrapped company produces the characteristics in a company that are also make it the most attractive in a venture-backed scenario, I think, in many, many cases. Now, in some instances, if you're bootstrapped and you can't scale, so you're going to be second or third market, that's a problem. But for many, many people, all I would say is the characteristics that you want to develop as an entrepreneur are the same in both fields. But one primary difference is that if you sign up for the venture capital world and you take, let's say, a very high valuation in your Series A, then you're at risk of potentially a down round the next time around, and you limit the types of exits that you can have to a certain dollar amounts that the venture capitalists can make an appropriate return on their investment to cover their portfolio losses. Then you get into a whole different sandbox. So I would just say that the venture capital world can be very binary. You either win or you lose. Whereas when you bootstrap, a little bit more flexibility in how you allocate profits and so on and so forth. But it depends largely on what your objective is. I would say, don't be intimidated by Silicon Valley. I mean, it gets a lot of press, it gets a lot of media, it's a small town. If you come here, you can meet pretty much all the people you'd ever want to meet. Don't be intimidated by it. People here are smart, but guess what? They're smart people